On to the main event of the evening. In 2001, the Northeast Regional Conference hosted Josh Miner as one of the keynote speakers. As a founding trustee of Outward Bound, Josh was instrumental in bringing the experiential philosophy of Kurt Hahn to the United States. Conference attendees were fortunate to hear Josh's vision and passion firsthand as he shared stories, metaphors, and lessons of children, curiosity, and character. Josh passed away 9 months later, and the region wanted to capture the essence of the wisdom he shared. The Northeast Regional Advisory Council then established the Josh Miner Dialogue Series in 2003 in memory of Josh Miner. Instead of the usual lecture format, the Dialogue Series takes on a different format in which a seasoned professional in the field interviews the honoree. The series allows conference participants to get to know the honoree on a more personal level, while learning of their best practices, nuggets of wisdom, and sometimes stories of what not to do. The Northeast Regional Advisory Council selects the Josh Miner Dialogue Series interviewee. It is taped every year and copies are available. Before we introduce this year's recipient, one of the things we did this year was we wanted to have some way to commemorate the past recipients. So what we decided to do is have some plaques made, and also to invite all the past recipients of the Josh Miner Dialogue Series to come to this conference so we could honor them. Knowing that most of them live fairly far away, most of them were not able to attend, but I'd like to recognize them now to run through the history of where we started in 2003. In 2003, the first recipient was Carl Ronke. And he did want to say thank you for the honor. He wasn't able to attend. I think he just got back from Baja or traveling in somewhere, but he thanked us for inviting him. In 2004, the interviewee was Dan Garvey, who we know is in Prescott now, and he has again wanted to express his thanks. 2005, the award winner was Phil Costello, who passed away shortly after he was honored. I want to say we were able to send both a video and the plaque to his wife, Roberta, who I can tell you, before we met this weekend, the emails that she sent to me in thanks of what we were able to give her made me think, if nothing else goes right this weekend, this is the best thing we could have done as a region to honor Phil, and to pass on that honor to his wife was, the gratitude she sent to all of us was really sincere, and that was just meant a lot to us. In 2006, our award winner was Keith King, and we'd like to have Keith stand up and receive his plaque as he's here in person, as we all know. And in 2007, last year, the recipient was Craig Dobkin, who lives in Colorado and wanted to say thank you, but he is also unable to attend, so their plaques have been mailed to them, and so that we were glad to recognize them again. This year, the Northeast Regional Advisory Council and the Northeast Region is proud to honor and have Pam McPhee as our Josh Miner Dialogue Series interviewee. Pam has a long history in the field, most notably as a founding member and director of the Brown Center for Innovative Learning at University of New Hampshire, and as a faculty member there. And I won't talk much more about her, as she'll be interviewed tonight by Anita Tucker, who is also a faculty member in the School of Social Work at University of New Hampshire and has known Pam over the past several years and known of her long before then, and her relationships working with the Brown Center makes her an appropriate person to chat with Pam tonight to get her stories. So I'll have Anita introduce her. Thank you.
Well, I'm excited to interview Pam tonight. I've known of Pam for a very long time. When I moved to New England in the late 1990s, I was facilitating in the Boston area. And I'd hear Pam's name always in the context of, oh, do you know Pam McPhee? Oh, you have to meet Pam McPhee. Oh, she's a social worker. You should meet her. Over and over again. And unfortunately, as life would happen, I never got up to meet Pam. But then I ended up moving here in 2002. And upon moving here in 2002, I was looking for some work, where if you're a contract facilitator, you know what I'm talking about. And I had heard, oh, well, this is a perfect time to go to the Brown Center and perhaps introduce myself. So I made a few phone calls, and to my dismay, was never returned back to me. So I said, I'll get on the internet, I'll look up the directions to the Brown Center, I'll get in my car, I'll drive there. So I get in the car. I do the drive about 25 minutes from my house. I go down the long, bumpy road thinking, this can't be it. Go turn down the driveway, bumpy again. This really can't be it. Pull in, there's no car except for one. I'm like, I must be in the wrong place. No lights on. It's Friday afternoon, so I'm thinking, well, everyone's left. Go in the front door, I call out, hello, hello, no one's there. At this point, I'm really nervous, like, must be in the wrong place, I'm gonna leave. Turn around and say, no, I'll keep going. I take a left down the long hallway, for those of you who know the Brown Center, by the bathrooms, open the door to the office and I say, hello, and all of a sudden I see this woman jumps out and goes, hi, how are you? And I look at her and I go, she's got jeans on, fleece, hair in a ponytail, glasses, smiley, and I'm like, oh, I'm thinking, oh, this must be a staff, can't be Pam. And I go, I'm looking for Pam McPhee. She's like, oh, that's me. And at that point, instantly we became friends. Now, 2 hours later, I left. Needless to say, from that day on, I became a facilitator at the Brown Center. Now, if I could tell you on that Friday afternoon or look in the future that 3 years later, I'd be on faculty at the University of New Hampshire and have Pam as a colleague and as a mentor, I would tell you you were crazy. So I feel very blessed and very honored to have Pam be part of this night and to honor her and interview her, and I'd like to invite her to the stage. It's a little nice. It's a nice rocker. So if you haven't been to the Josh Meyer Dialogue Series event before, it's an interview. I'll ask Pam a few questions, but in classic Pam fashion, she said, well, maybe we'll do it a little differently. Yeah, I can turn my Hello. So her request to do it a little differently is that we're going to interview. Is there a lot of feedback? We're going check. Is that I will ask her, maybe I won't use the mic. I'll ask her a few questions after a while, and she's going to facilitate some question and answer with you all. There we go. Turn this one on. You got this on tape? Great. So I'll ask her a few questions, she'll chat with you all, and then she's going to lead an activity with you all, and then we're going to finish the evening. That's the way it's going to go. Okay. Pam,
Anita.
how you doing?
I'm doing better if you just talk to me.
Tell us. We want to know. Some of us are young, some of us not so young. How did you get into this field? What's the beginnings? How did you end up here?
Definitely was my camping experience at Frost Valley. I grew up in New Jersey, of which we had a park nearby and a little bit of green space here and there, but it was being a camper at Frost Valley, where last year was the regional AE, and I definitely lived 50 weeks of a year for the 2 weeks of being a camper. But it didn't stop there. After being a camper at Frost Valley and a counselor, went on to college, and it just wasn't fitting. Even though it was at the University of New Hampshire, it still wasn't fitting for me. So I took a semester to do a semester in the Ronke at Knowles. And that's when I said, this is it. All I ever want to be is a Knowles instructor. I fell in love with expeditioning. I fell in love with big skies, with being with people, away from all the societal pressures and figuring out who you are in this big world of ours, and came back to UNH. And at that point, there was an outdoor education. However, there was Jed Williamson in the education department. There was Mike Gass, who had just started as an adjunct faculty member, and there was Dan Garvey as assistant dean of students. So it could not have been a better time to come back from a semester in the Rockies. Jed gave me great advice as I went over and said, I want to be a Knowles instructor. And how do I make a major around that? And he said, you write your own. So sent back across the street, and with the help of Mike and Keith King, who we went over to the LIVE program to interview, did a self-design major in outdoor education. And from that on, people just believed in me and gave me opportunities, and I've just been definitely blessed and born under a lucky star.
So if you had to choose a mentor, who was your biggest mentor? I hear a lot of names. I hear Dan and Mike and Keith. If you had to choose one mentor, who do you feel like is the biggest mentor in that period of your life?
Well, if anybody knows me, you know that I wear my heart on my sleeve, so I'm going to get very verklempt, but she's right there. So my mom, if she could stand up. Come on! So growing up wasn't always easy, but she taught me that you just throw your heart out and follow it with everything you've got, and it's all going to work out.
So if you take us from when you graduated from college, how did you end up being who you are today? And especially the involvement, I think a lot of people are interested in how the Brown Center came about and that whole progression.
Thanks. Well, thanks to Jed Williamson, who he was doing the Outward Bound in the winter and said, you know, what, you want to work for Hurricane Island? And I'm like, I don't know what that looks like, but okay. So he made it financially possible for me to be an Outward Bound instructor. And from that winter, and that's pretty great as a sophomore in college, I was an intern for WEA, which meant I took a bus out to Idaho, packed everything up, met with Paul Petzold, drove up with Pete Peterson to Alaska, and this is on the Alcan Highway, so it took a month to drive up because it wasn't paved, and we broke down almost every other day. We got there, and breakup was late, meaning that you couldn't drive any further. So then we had another few weeks to hike all our supplies in, and we finally get into our homesteader, Yule Kilcher, to find out that the other instructor wasn't showing up. So we had Steve Young as one instructor and an intern, me, at the time. And what are we going to do? Because they were about to start a 9-week course for WEA. So a phone call into Paul Petzold, and Paul says, we want you to be the assistant instructor. But Paul, I haven't ever kayaked, which we need to do to get to the glaciers, and I've never been on a glacier. And how am I going to be the assistant instructor? Well, you got the book Freedom of the Hills, don't you? Yeah. And so I kept explaining to him, I really don't think I'm cut out to be the assistant. I'll do everything I can. He says, look, you've made it this far. You carried it all in. And more importantly than anything else, and anybody who knew Paul knew this, you have judgment. So I said, okay, well then my judgment is I'll do it, but if anything goes wrong, it's your fault. So with that, he gave me the job. And so it was a 9-week expedition in Alaska where we kayaked across the bay, back to the rock to the ice to the snow, skied to the peak, and then a mixed route to the top. Totally unsupported, except for what we could carry. So lots of fairing of gears. I am getting to the Brown Center, don't worry. So after, and this was pretty cool because we're also checking glaciers for the USGS, field checking them. So lots of different stuff going on, and it was true. Thank God for Freedom of the Hills, because at night I'm like, now how do you cross a glacier? You know, when I'm reading the book. It's a fat book to be carrying in a backpack, but it's well worth it, at least in that situation. The sun never sets, and though I was prepared with my flashlight, but it never sets, and sure enough, the sky turned bright red, and we got hammered by a storm, in a really hammered, to the point that there was 7 of us in a 2-person tent for 4 days. We were afraid to light a stove. We didn't have room to light a stove, even if we did, so people were losing a lot of weight. We were beating the sides of the tent so that they wouldn't ice up. It was pretty desperate in many ways. And so there was a part of me that went, this is great. This is like Lord of the Flies. I mean, we could die. I bet we'll all come together and share our deepest, darkest secrets and what the meaning of life is, and if we make it through it, how we're going to make the world a better place, and this is awesome. And it wasn't awesome. We all fell apart. We could barely stay centered and focused on taking the next breath. We were not at each other's throat, but pretty close to it. So it was really a horrific experience all the way through. We had to force march down in one day because all of our gear was so in disrepair that we couldn't stop, not if we were going to get the storm again. So when we did get down, folks had lost a lot of weight. We were in really pretty tough shape. Kayak across the bay, end the expedition on time, and we're so glad to never have to see each other again. So much for that experiment. But what I took from that was like, maybe leadership is more than getting the task done. I mean, everybody came back safe. We did the field checking for the USGS, so we got the job done, but it wasn't sustainable. No one ever wanted to do it again. No one ever wanted to see each other again. So I had a full year in which to think, okay, maybe leadership is more than just getting the job done. So we wrote to lots of gear companies, and we got North Face to sponsor us and all this high-tech gear. And I spent a whole year in going, what is leadership? And during that year, I was lucky enough to spend quite a bit of time with a mentor of mine, also in that first row. He's not going to get away with this, Bill Cuff. If you don't mind standing up, Bill. And if anybody has an opportunity to be around Bill Cuff, I strongly recommend it. And what I took from that year with Bill was seeing how to bring out the best in everyone. That leadership is really being able to see the potential and then support the environment for that person to step into it. Back to Alaska. Trying it again. This time I really am an instructor, right from the get-go. The whole thing, the whole rigmarole, up to the top. And sure enough, we get hammered by the storm again. But this time we're even worse, because we had one person get snow blindness because they'd lost their goggles. We had another person skin their forehead and have to be stitched up. We had rock fall, we had an earthquake, and at one point we actually rappelled into the crevasses, thinking it would be safer to do hanging belays in a crevasse than it would be on the ice field. So it was desperate. There's no doubt about it. And it wasn't quite like, this is great, but it was great. And it really was great. I mean, it was one of the most amazing 3 days of my entire life, because it all came together, where we all did say, what is it all about? And it wasn't just because it was a different group of people. It was definitely because myself and the co-instructor and these people were committed into creating a culture that we wanted to live into, and even if live into only meant one more minute. We were able to get out, we were able to get down, same situation.
Does your mom know all about this?
Believe it or not. But I didn't go back again. I figured 3 strikes, you're out. And from that one I went, okay, I think I get it. I think leadership is more than just getting the job done. I think it's around creating a deliberate culture. It's around living into the possibilities of the future, and not just the habits of the past. But not everybody can go on an expedition. You know, people don't have the financial resources. People don't have the physical resources. People don't have the time. Well, maybe we can create some place where it can be accessible for people with all abilities and all financial situations and all amount of time to understand that they are the cause and effect of their experience, and they are the future. And thankfully at that point I was in graduate school in social work and needed a place to stay, and Evelyn Brown came into my life. And she wanted to start a international outdoor education center. So our 2 dreams met. Mike Gass also a big part of creating the financial part of making it happen, and the Brown Center started. And it was really, for me, a huge experiment around, I really believe humans we are where we are from evolution, and evolution is a very reactionary process, meaning giraffes didn't grow long necks because they thought, oh, there's not going to be leaves pretty soon, I better stretch my neck. You die, if you don't have a long neck. And I really feel like that might be the case with us. So if we've come to where we are from a reactionary, evolutionary process, what is it that we need to do to turn that around now that we have this technology where we can kill ourselves, to be proactive, to say it is going to all end up a certain way if we don't do something different. And how can we do it different now because we want to do it different and not because we have to do it different? So that's why I love the Brown Center, because it's just this gigantic laboratory around how do we help people get and interpersonal skills to be able to be proactive. And the other really best part about the Brown Center is the amazing people that are there, yourself included. It's just this magnet for people to come and bring their passion and join in on this mission of bringing out the best in all of us.
What's been your biggest challenge, do you think, in part of founding the Brown Center and keeping it sustainable? I didn't bring that question up beforehand. It came up now. Sorry.
The biggest challenge in making the Brown... I'm a programmer at heart. I didn't get into outdoor education to sit behind a computer, as Mark Staley here is laughing, because we sit there 10 hours a day looking at our computer. This is why we got into outdoor ed. So I think it's understanding that maybe my role is that of supporting other people and not always being able to do what I want to do, which is working with the people, and that's the gift I can bring, is that of the maintaining the Brown Center separate from the bureaucracy that can exist and the crushing burden sometimes of the funding and the financial and the litigation and everything else that comes into it, and remembering what is the Brown Center all about. Thankfully, it doesn't take much. All I have to do is peek my head out of the office, and there's Deb Sugarman and Logan and Lori and other people who are right there going, oh yeah, that's why we're doing the Brown Center. So definitely the biggest challenge is sometimes getting mired in the day-to-day and forgetting the bigger picture.
We've heard about Alaska. What about, I know we're always interested, what is maybe one story about something of a way not to do something, or maybe one of your biggest oops moments that you could share with us, do you think? Close calls.
Close calls. There's so many of them.
That's good to know. It makes us all human.
Yes.
So.
Well, I'm watching my daughters go, well, she could tell that one or that one. Maybe this one. Did you have one, Kaylee, you wanted me to? Okay. I think it was probably when I was a Knoll student at the time, and in that invincible part of your life where it's all so new and exciting that really you're relying on other people to tell you what your limits are. Yeah, I wouldn't have wanted to have me on my course. I know that for a fact. And it was caving. So it was this one cave where you rappel into the cave and then you do a crawl to a place. And I was able to stay on after Knowles and work for the USGS. And if you ever want to work for the USGS mapping caves, it's pretty cool, because the interview is you have to be able to fit through a coat hanger. So try it. I mean, you can bend it, but you can't unwrap it. So if you can fit through a coat hanger, you got the job. So I proved it this past January that it still can be done. Anyway, little tidbit. You never know what kind of jobs people are looking for. Anyway, so practice now. So it's about mapping caves. And I wanted the job of going out and trying to find new places. I didn't want to be the one drawing pictures and taking measurements. So I wanted to be the one going out. And it was great fun because you'd crawl out and try to find new things. And I thought I had found a hole that went to the next cave system. The reason I thought that was the amount of air that was coming through the hole. I'm like, that's it. This is the one they've been looking for, the passage they've been looking for years. I'm going to do it. So I tried to get, and there was no way. There's no way I was going to get down that hole. I'm like, all right, that's all right. So we pack up our gear, we go back, and I don't eat for 3 days because I'm going to get down that hole. And so we go back to do the hole. And I practice, trying to dislocate and do what you need to do and go into this hole. And sure enough, I go into this hole further than I had gotten before. And I got stuck. And so the only thing sticking out are my feet. And my feet are sticking out this way, so to pull my feet would have been to break my knees. So it wasn't a good idea to go down that hole. I could have been thinking a little bit more about it. And my biggest fear at that moment in time was that people would leave me in the hole. I was like, because I wasn't able to get out. Until I finally said to someone, just take my ankle, because I was starting to black out because I was kind of doing a handstand in this hole. And I said, just take my ankle and keep turning till something happens. So indeed, that's what they did, and did a little bit of hip damage, but they got me out of the hole, and Stokes littered me to the place where it had to be raised up, and I realized that at that point, the big oops here was, maybe I shouldn't be looking for other people to tell me what my limits are. Maybe I need to take a deep breath before just going after something, no matter how exciting it was. And the good news is that little passage did go to the bigger cave. So I was pretty psyched about that. The bad news was that only 15 feet further, there was a place you could have walked into the other. So, yeah. Oops. So is this the time I can do mine?
No.
Oh.
So, one of the things I wanted to bring up is the fact that although this is not the reason you were chosen, but it is true that you're the first woman to receive this award. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to what it's been like to be a woman in this field, and how that's been a role in your progression.
Thanks. Early on in the 80s, it was actually really helpful because it was kind of the affirmative action in that the field was dominated by men. So to be a female, people would hire you as an instructor, for Outward Bound, for Knowles, for WEA very quickly. And I just went for it. I took every opportunity I possibly could. So that it was great in that there was opportunities, partly because of being a female. But then as I noticed more and more females come into the field, I noticed that somewhere around the mid-20s in terms of our age, there'd be this huge drop-off of the amount of women in the field. And I kept looking around, what's going on here? What's this all about? And really realized that, particularly during the childbearing years, it's hard to be pregnant and carry a backpack. I mean, it just doesn't work. And though that seems like, well, why should that be a big deal? It's just 9 months and then off you go. And as you know, thank you, Jack, it's a lot more complicated than that. And it's not just about the breastfeeding and the children needing you for that, but it's about this incredible bond to your kids. And the life of outdoor education and adventure education is, for many of us, I think, in direct contrast to where our hearts are with our children. So we're splitting ourselves in half to try to do what has always been a passion of ours in the adventure and outdoor education, and all of a sudden we have these beings in our life that give us all new meaning. And for many people, that's the place in which I can't do this anymore. And whether it be logistics or other ways, sometimes they stay in touch with it, but the idea of balancing a family and being in outdoor education is really, really hard. And I think a lot of people say, I can't do both. And I'm fortunate enough to have Steve, my husband and partner, who was willing to be a stay-at-home dad. So I didn't really have to make that decision. He's like, I can do that. We'll make this happen, and you continue on. But not everybody has that luxury. So we have to make a really hard decision, and I think it's somewhat the same when it comes to why there's so few women who have their PhDs, not just in our field, but any field. Child rearing and childbearing is exactly at the time in which you're trying to do that. So a huge hats off to you, Anita, because you've done it both.
It's not about me, Pam. She likes to do that, but it's not about me.
But it's really hard. I mean, and we've talked about it, and there's just a knowing amongst other women how really hard that is to try to balance all those things.
So you can do your thing now.
I can do my thing. Okay. So what's my thing? I was like, oh my God, I couldn't listen to myself for an hour. So a dialogue for me and dialogue series isn't just about this dialogue, but it's around everybody having an opportunity to dialogue. And this past December, I had an opportunity to be down, was it December, Mark? Yeah. To be down at ETDA, Experiential Training Development Alliance, of which AEE was the birthplace of this amazing organization. And Peter Block, organizational consultant, very famous man, led us on a 2.5-day workshop. And it was really around how to be a social architect. And I really think that's what we are in some respects. We've just never thought of ourselves that way. So I wanted to take this opportunity to share with you all and have you experience just a teeny snippet of what I got to experience for 2.5 days with Peter Block. Now, with Peter Block, it was with 20 people, mind you. So I'm not too sure how this works, but that's all right. So rather than constantly say this is a quote from Peter or not, just know that many of these words are not my own. They are adapted from Peter as we begin. So, I am the excuse for you to get what you came here for today. I am the excuse for you to get what you came here for today. And you're going to explore what you came here for today in groups of 3 in just a moment. And why groups of 3? Because if you're in groups of 2, you can spend a lot of time talking to that person, not necessarily about your truth, but about managing their reaction. In groups of 3, it's not about managing their reaction, it's about speaking your truth. It's not really a dialogue in that we're not going to be talking back and forth, because you're going to actually give the 2 other people in your group the gift of listening. You're going to just listen wholly and totally with your heart, and you're going to listen for the first time, because it's the first time they're going to be saying these things to you, to the other person. You're not going to interrupt. You're not going to give advice. Because in doing either of those, you're basically saying, I'm bored with you. Let me tell you about me. You're just going to be listening and giving them that gift. You can have 10 minutes to manage that time however you are. One person can talk the whole time. You can divide it up. You can have a timekeeper. You can do whatever you want. It doesn't matter. But you'll have 10 minutes in your groups of 3 to talk about this question. Once again, it's just a talking from you. It's not going back and forth. So in a moment, I'm going to give you the question, but first let me give you a little bit about the structure. In a moment, you're going to be standing up, and I encourage you not to just turn to the person to the right or left of you. We're not going to count off by 3s, because why should geography determine your fate? You're going to stand up and you're going to see someone that you say, I need to speak with. I need to hear you. I need to hear your story. For whatever reason that means. So the other part you're going to do is you're going to stand up and you're going to choose. You're not going to wait to be chosen. Because you're going to practice being proactive as opposed to reactive. People understand the concept of that? All right. And the question that you're going to be talking to one another about why is it important for you to be here today? Why is it important for you to be here today? And hopefully that's sufficiently vague, because then it's perfect. In 10 minutes, I'm going to ring a little chime, so you'll know that the 10 minutes is up. You're all not going to hear it, but those who do are going to make eye contact with someone who's talking, and then they're going to know that the chime happened. And if you can't make an eye contact, you're going to have heard it, and you're just going to go and place your hand on that person's shoulder, or whatever it might be, so that very quickly we'll all come to a quiet, and then we're going to explore another question. There's not going to be a report out. I also ask that you hold things in confidence, unless you've decided as a group of 3 that it's not. But this is for you to tell your story, however you want to tell it. Don't worry about getting the facts straight, because as I was talking with Brent Bell, remember that even the past is unpredictable. All right. So if you wouldn't mind, stand up. And choose and do not wait to be chosen.
Okay, it'll be very few.
That's a wonderful daughter.
Yes. I think it's been wonderful. It also gives me a little better understanding about what she does at the Brown Center, which before was somewhat confusing when people would ask, what does your daughter really do? So I have a better understanding of that now. And it was fun listening to her once again recount her experience in Alaska, and to remember that I lived through those experiences with her, but I was home. yeah, I remember. Yes, oh, absolutely. So. I think it's wonderful, and what a great group of people. Wonderful. You know, they seem to, they think beyond themselves. It's wonderful.
Buckminster Fuller. Can people hear me? You want mic? Okay. Thanks. What's this? A hand? No, this isn't a hand. This is a pattern integrity. Not one cell of this hand will be here next year. Every cell in this hand will not be here. Yet this hand will be here. Every cell in this hand has an opportunity to be anything else. It has the DNA to create me again. It could be heart or brain or bone, all kinds of organs from every cell. So what makes us hand to hand next year is the social identity of all those other cells around it, helping it grow into the possibility of sustaining this hand. This is a pattern integrity. You are the social identity of helping people grow into their possibilities of what their DNA is going to allow them to be. This last question is, what is the possibility you would like to grow into? What is the possibility you would like to grow into? If you don't mind, stand. Choose, do not wait to be chosen. So in asking that question about the possibility, what I hope that you do is you take whatever it is that you say and you carry it with you. Because in carrying it with you, in any group of people or any interaction with another person, it is a possibility. And it can change tomorrow. It doesn't have to have an answer. It will never have an answer. I hope your possibility is so big, it's like the North Star, where you're never going to get there, but it's going to guide you. And in your guiding of you, you're going to be influencing everyone else in the pattern integrity of becoming all that is possible. So keep it out there and keep it with you and carry it with you and bring it to every interaction you have. I was going to rap, but Anita told me I can't.
So this is completely impromptu, but Pam originally had 3 questions she was going to ask you, and I happened to steal her cheat sheet as she wasn't looking. So I'm going to ask Pam this question.
So mean.
Sorry.
So if you stand, sit, whatever you want, but leave, whatever works for you. Or maybe I'll do it. No.
Pam, what is a question in experiential education that we should be asking, and why does it matter to you?
Oh, man. That's why I was going to have you all, because I'm clueless. I have no idea. So ask it one more time.
What is a question in experiential education that we should be asking, and why does it matter to you?
I think I've somewhat answered that, which is a bit of, for me, how do I inspire people to be as powerful as they will allow themselves to be, so that their reactions come from within them as to what's right, and not from societal influences that tell them who they need to be and how they need to act. For me, that feels like the key to being proactive as opposed to reactive in our life. So how do I help people be as powerful as they will allow themselves to be?
My last question is, where do you see the future of the field going, and specifically your place in that?
Ooh. That wasn't on my sheet. The future of the... One of the things that made me a little nervous today at the conference, so I don't think we're going to go there, but I
She makes up her own rules all the time.
I don't.
This is what I work with.
That's why I'm the director, okay? People who work for me, they go, yeah, that's right. But was that I heard fear, and I hadn't heard that before at an AEE. In one of the conferences, someone was saying something to the effect of, well, what if someone got hurt or potential for hurt? How would you address that in a camping situation where they're asking you to do something that's risky? And most of the answers from people in the group was around, well, just talk to them about litigation, and talk to them about they'll close down, and talk to them. And thankfully, someone said, no, talk to them about, that's someone's child. That's someone that's going to get hurt. Another question was, why should we do evidence-based research? Well, and the answers were all, well, it's because around funding, because without funding, we're going to get closed down. And I'm like, well, no. It's because don't we want to be doing the right thing and knowing why, that what we're doing is working? So this litigation and this funding and, the fear that I hear come in is important. It's part of the motivation, but it can't be the motivation. We need to hold on to the roots of doing what we know we need to do because it's the right thing to do, and not because these societal pressures create fear in us, because then we aren't as powerful as we allow ourselves to be. Then we are doing things because other people are saying, if you don't, this is going to happen. As opposed to for ourselves saying, if I don't, I'm not living into that possibility. So not giving over our power to others. So I love that AEE brings us together to have those hard conversations, to meet with elders that help us connect back to those roots so that we go, that's right. It's not about other people telling us what we need to be in order to exist in that society. It's for us to be telling ourselves what we need to be to create the society. So my part in that, and my most recent passion, is expeditioning has been a big part of my life, and I'm so thankful that my family allows me to go back to expeditioning in the month of January, these past 2 Januaries, and I'm doing that at Prescott College, group process for adventure educators using equine enhanced learning. And it's a whole nother learning curve for me, and and where I'm going with this in terms of the future is that expeditioning and learning with people have been a huge influence of who I am, but now working in an environment that involves another species, in which I'm counting on this species to carry me and it's counting on me to carry it through the desert, in this case, has a whole nother learning around our place in the world. So my focus right now and my passion is around relational leadership. That's not just around leadership of humans, but it's leadership within ourselves and allowing the environment to also lead if I know how to listen and I know how to follow. So that's the piece I'm beginning to explore. The artistry of who we are, and not tools and techniques are helpful, absolutely, whether it be front loading or a new game or a new adventure activity and a new medium, all those things are wonderful, but those are just tools in our toolbox. This relational leadership for me is around helping myself and other people understand ourselves as artists, so we can choose those tools proactively and not just use them because it's the only thing we have. So that's the direction I'm going in, and I'm sticking to it.
I would like to open up to the audience if anyone has any questions. I will pass around the mic, so I'd appreciate it if you talk into the mic. So raise your hands if you have questions. Mark will do it.
Questions, anybody?
I had a conversation down in Little Rock that I want to remind you about. That's really interesting, that your new direction that you've taken it with the equine facilitation. I find it very, very interesting to see you sitting up there during the Josh Miner series, right? Knowing that as a result of a conversation between Josh Miner and Marge Kitteridge, Nara was born. So it's interesting.
Thanks, Chris.
What are the words? NARA, National Association for Handicapped Riders Association? Okay. So you're carrying on the work.
Thanks, Chris.
I don't know if you guys noticed, but I kind of stole her for the last question. And it was, what possibility do you want to grow into? And I would just like you to share that with everybody, because she had such a good answer that I just can't resist.
Wait, I think that was one of the ground rules. No, just kidding. I've been outed. No, thank you. Thank you. So for myself, I am the possibility of love in all ways at all times. I am the possibility of love in all ways at all times. And why am I that possibility? Why have I chosen that? Is because I feel that that is the basis of it all. And that if I can bring that in all ways at all times, things that we have conflict over, or things that we're less than who we can be, whether it be greed or fear or all those things, are so much smaller. So I'm the possibility of love in all ways at all times.
Questions? Any other? Oh.
So you speak a lot about having the chance to have worked with some pretty amazing people in the field, and often I'm astounded by the mentors that I have also finding value in learning from me, or the kids that I work with also I find huge learning from them. So perhaps the people you have worked with are no longer here. Perhaps you don't have the time on a daily basis to connect with them. And if you did, what is something that you would tell them that you've learned since spending time with them? Not from them, but that you would teach them from your time afterwards.
Help me again.
So not something that you've learned particularly from them,
Okay.
but something that you've learned in your years in a different kind of way that you would then offer to teach them.
Oh, that's a tough one. I feel like the greatest gift that I can give, and this was actually words from Dennis Meadows, is ask a question that I think I know the answer to and really listen. And that question sometimes is who are you and what matters to you? And in the asking of the question, not the answer, is that exploration and discovery and the possibility. So asking a question I think I know the answer to, and really listen.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry.
So you shared the story about when you went to Alaska. Was there, like, prior to that, what really sparked in your mind to that aha moment of, I need to be outside doing this?
It was not in my mind, it was probably in my heart, and it was just a total calling. It was, I'm most alive where things are simple and where rules aren't made by people, but by the earth. And if I can get into that environment, I'll understand the rules of which I want to create to live by, and maybe I can influence that for others. So as much as I love adventuring and mountaineering and paddling, and I really didn't do it as a recreational activity, I did it more as a calling and a quest for what are the rules? Are there rules? What does it mean, and who am I in this environment, and who am I as a part of this? So I actually go there because it's simple, and it's more about being and less about doing, and it's more about being and less about thinking. And I was lucky enough to do it just even 3 weeks ago and be back out in Arizona again, to just to be. And in doing that being, it's not, that doesn't make sense, but in being there, it's not so much about escaping, but about how can I take that and bring it to the front country where I live, as opposed to escaping to the back country. So it was more of a calling, and continues to be.
Ladies and gentlemen, our 2008 Josh Miner Dialogue Series recipient, Pam McPhee.